Hello and welcome to ILTV's Israel Weekly, where we discuss the latest in Israel's geopolitical developments. I'm Aaron Porras, and with me today in the studio are former Meretz Party Knesset member Avshalom Vilan, Dr. Martin Sherman, who is the executive director of the Israel Institute for Strategic Studies, Colonel Miri Eisen, who is the former media advisor to two prime ministers, and Dr. Mordechai Kedar of the Begin Sadat Center for Strategic Studies at Bar Ilan University. Thank you all very much for coming in.
Pleasure.
Now, we're going to be discussing BDS, the global boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement today. Now, while the modern campaign to boycott Israel states that it began from a joint committee of over 170 NGOs back in 2005, in fact, it predates the State of Israel itself. The Arab League Council issued a declaration calling for the boycott of Jewish goods all the way back in December of 1945, and the movement was then reinvigorated at the first Durban Conference in 2001, when Israel was arguably likened to apartheid publicly for the first time. Then it was organized and expanded in 2005. Well, now Israel is fighting back by investing over $75 million to create a not-for-profit organization specifically designed for the battle. Thankfully, Israel won't be alone in the fight either, as both Norway and Denmark have also announced they're stopping aid to BDS-supporting NGOs.
נפגשתי בזמנו עם ראש ממשלת דנמרק, שוחחתי איתו גם בטלפון, אחר כך גם עם שר החוץ של דנמרק, אחר כך עם שרי החוץ של אירופה, המפגש בבריסל, שבהם היה גם נוכח נציג דנמרק, ודרשתי מכולם להפסיק את התמיכה בארגונים שתומכים בטרור ומקדמים חרמות נגד ישראל. דנמרק החליטה על הצעד הזה, היא לא הראשונה והיא לא האחרונה. אנחנו נמשיך בקו הזה.
So starting off with countries like Denmark and Norway and this latest contribution of ending funding for BDS supporting NGOs, how much does that actually really help? I'd like to start with you.
I hope that it will. I'm not so sure that in the long run, this is the exact answer, meaning that we have to do the best of our ability to take such a kind of a policy that we can convince all people in the world with really a goodwill that will understand that such kind of attempt trying to isolate the state of Israel and let's say it's right for self-determination and whatsoever, it's obvious, and I hope that if we will change once a day our policy, that will be more moderate, we'll struggle with all our forces for the survival of state Israel, but at the same time to understand that on this land there are two people and we have to find a political solution. I then believe that, like it happened in the past, that we can convince most of the states of the world in our right for everything, for exit, for self-determination, whatsoever, and the struggle against the BDS and all other movements that want to be against the state of Israel, no matter what are facts on the ground whatsoever, will be much easier.
You look like you have a response for that.
Well, you know, I find it quite extraordinary that anyone today could actually advocate setting up a giant Gaza on the fringes of Tel Aviv as a solution to the conflict. I mean, what could possibly go wrong setting up yet another homophobic, misogynistic, Muslim-majority tyranny? That's the solution.
Well, but that's
just what my colleague here was advocating, setting up a giant Gaza overlooking Tel Aviv and Ben Gurion Airport. I was saying, what could possibly go wrong? But just coming back to BDS. First of all, I think the initiative to set up a fund with an NGO was something I've been advocating for the last half decade. I think the funds that have been allocated are hopelessly inadequate. I think we need at least 10 times that amount. I've been advocating setting up 1% of state budget for public diplomacy. $1 billion. But, you know, better much too little and much too late than nothing. But,
right.
but the trouble is with BDS is a smokescreen. Because BDS is a symptom, not the sickness. The sickness that creates BDS, at least the modern version of BDS, not what you were talking about before, right. The sickness that creates it is Israel's recognition of the legitimacy of the Palestinian narrative. Because you have two conflicting narratives, and if the one's illegitimate, it undermines the legitimacy of the other.
So I want to come to this side of the table and maybe hear an opposing viewpoint to that. You know, how would you quantify whether or not this will be a successful initiative?
I'm going to start in that sense. I think that one of the things that we need to look at is at the state of the younger generation. I think that the BDS as an idea is mainly targeting people who are the ones who don't remember the establishment of the State of Israel, who don't understand what Zionism means, who don't have what I have, even though I'm also in that sense, you know, of the generation of coming now, of having that wonder of this amazing place called Israel that was established here in 1948. And what BDS has managed to do to a certain degree is to give an alternative narrative. And on this, I agree with Martin that just a second, let me finish it out.
Israel's allowed
No,
to.
I'm not going to let you in right now, is to give an alternative narrative. But, Martin, those people exist. And I think that what we're missing out in right now is not just in combating their narrative, because we definitely need to do so, we also have to think about our own narrative. I think that people under 50 in Israel worldwide who say today that they're Zionist, I am a Zionist, I need to define what that means. And I do not think it means denying the other side exists. I know what it means to me. In Zionism is not about the other side, but it is also not about denying the other side.
What does that even mean?
Exactly
what does that even mean?
Look, let's put things as they are. The BDS is not against the occupation of 1967. It is against the occupation of 1948. Period. Exactly. They do not want us at all.
Exactly.
Neither in Tel Aviv, nor in Haifa, nor in Beersheba, definitely Jerusalem. This is what those masses, this is what they are demonstrating, is against the mere existence of the State of Israel. This is why for them Israel is Tel Aviv before it is Hebron or Nablus. So, and we have to understand, because 99% of those who demonstrate against Israel do think exactly this. This is one thing.
99% don't even know what they're demonstrating about, but that's something else.
Since anti-Semitism today is viewed as a negative thing, mainly because of the Second World War, it has only different naming. BDS equals anti-Semitic, means anti-Jewish.
Well, so that's the question of mine, is how
as clear as possible. Because, again, those people who curse Hitler for not finishing the job are today boycotting Israel. This is the same thing.
I think that's.
Let's make it also simple.
I think that's an oversimplification of the issue.
It's as simple as it is. You don't have to make
Even Martin
complicated
thinks that's a simplification of the issue.
Look,
and I don't usually agree with
when
Martin.
These thugs who demonstrate against Israel, their thinking is very simple. They are not as sophisticated as we are. They know they don't want to see Israel at all, mainly because the Palestinian narrative actually builds itself on the ruins of Israel.
Exactly.
But
and that's exactly what I was saying. Exactly what I was saying.
Not the issue.
This is the issue.
This is the issue.
Wait.
Those who don't want to
But
see
it's not that Jazeera here, Mr. Kedar. Listen. Let's put into consideration that your argument is right. I think that not, but never mind. But the question is what Israel is doing with it. Not that we are always right. We have to convince the world public opinion. This is the name of the game.
So
this is the real Zionism. We will not live alone for ourselves. We are living in the international community. And we have to convince it, and you have to take it into consideration.
You want to convince
the question is not if you are right or not. What we are doing to convince the world and to show him in his word, in his assumption, that we are right.
What do you have to do? What do you have to do?
Europe becomes Islamic. Every single day, there are more Muslims. And the politicians in Europe, whether in France or Britain or whatever, they are in order to get again into the Parliament House, they need to appeal to the Islamic street.
Here we are sitting and talking to an audience that's listening to us. BDS was not invented, not by the Muslims, Martin, not by the Palestinians in that sense. It was brought up mainly in anti-Zionist UK. So when we're talking about BDS and about the ideas that are looking at our right to exist as our Jewish self-determination in the state, it didn't start all over the place. It started at the heart of London.
What's the base of BDS?
Just a second, I'd love to be able to finish a sentence.
What's the basis of
when you look at it in that sense, what I'm bringing up in that sense here is I want to ask each one of us what we think about when we think about Zionism and the State of Israel, because I'm both agreeing with you and disagreeing. There's no question whatsoever that they're calling for our absolute destruction in BDS, and it's about 1948. But
So
I
what are you
also think,
suggesting?
Martin,
So what are you
but I also
suggesting?
think
Setting up
that
a
if you
giant
address
Gaza,
it,
such a
Martin,
giant Gaza overlooking Tel Aviv.
Martin,
That's your way of
always
addressing
bring
it.
it to bringing up the Gaza
Because
Strip.
no, not the
But
Gaza
that
Strip.
isn't always that different aspect. There's a different aspect that has to do not just with about the historic compromise. If we agree, no,
They want
because
to
that's
kill us.
where you go.
They want to kill us.
For
So what do you
you-
suggest the compromise is?
for
Only
you,
killing,
for
only
my
killing us
blue
half of us?
Well,
What's-
let's
what's
not
the-
let
what's the
anybody
compromise?
talk. We won't be able to hear
What's the,
anything.
yeah, I'd like to hear what the compromise
If
is.
the idea itself is that there is no compromise, it's either Israel or nothing else, I absolutely disagree with you. I think that the discussion 70 years into the establishment of the State of Israel about a historic compromise, not about my loving the Palestinians, but about my acknowledging that there's an additional several million people that I don't want to rule over, is a different aspect, because you brought that in, then the eternal idea
Excuse me.
that everything is anti-Semitism. If
No, it's not
everything is
It's not everything is
anti-Semitism,
not anti-Semitism. It's not everything is
you
anti-Semitism.
said I answered
Because
you. I answered you.
I don't think.
You
I don't
each
think.
came
I don't
from
think
different
everything.
aspects.
I don't think.
Oh my
I don't
God!
think.
I'm going to go out of the
think.
room and ask us to bring them
I
back.
Hello.
Excuse me. I want a map of the State of
This is
Israel
the
to come
whole
up
idea.
right now, because on a map of the State of
Miri,
Israel, it doesn't
Miri,
show the
Miri,
West
Miri,
Bank,
Miri.
and it doesn't show the Gaza Strip,
Exa-
and that doesn't
Miri,
mean that we
let
think
me-
that they're part of Israel. Stop showing me maps.
let me ask you
Maps
something.
are done by
Let me ask you-
people.
let me ask you something.
You're making me angry.
The two-state
Put it up your
The
sleeve.
two-state principle.
We'll
The
sleep
two-state
there.
principle has been on the table now as the centerpiece of Israeli foreign policy for a quarter of a decade. So many people have paid with their lives and limbs for it. How much more do you want to go on this insane experiment? What would have to happen to convince you that the Palestinians want you dead? And on the other hand, and if that's what they want, what's your compromise? Only being half dead? I'm really at a loss to understand. What has to happen? What has to happen? What has to happen? What has to happen? What has to happen?
Leave the Palestinians type with all my respect.
You know what?
I know the flags.
We tried that.
I know all the leaders.
We
I
tried
have
that.
more hours than
We tried
anybody
that.
else
We
meeting
tried that
with
in
Arafat
Gaza.
and other
We
leaders.
tried that
The
in
question
Gaza.
is
We'd
not
like to
what
stop.
they
We
want.
tried that in
The
Gaza.
question is what we want. What with the third, fourth generation of Israelis
So you
over live on our throne? This is our idea
You want to make a
forever living on our
Gaza?
throne.
You want to
back
make
to
a Gaza? You want to
BDS
make a
now?
Gaza overlooking Tel Aviv? That's what you want?
Martin,
Make a Gaza
everything
overlooking over
doesn't
Tel
come
Aviv?
back to
Okay, I want to bring it back.
Yeah, it
I come
does.
from a family
It does.
that for 3 generations already are giving the best of the ability to protect the state of Israel.
do you want?
Don't tell me about security because you have no chance.
Don't
What
tell
I
me about
ask you,
security as well.
what
I also
is your
serve behind
vision
enemy lines.
about
I
your
also
what is
serve
your
behind enemy lines. Always bring up
vision?
security.
What is your
Yitzhak
vision
Rabin.
for the future of the state of Israel, not the future of the Palestinians, the future of the state
Empty
of Israel.
empty slogan. Because if you're advocating setting up a Palestinian state in Judea and Samaria, you have to bring up a cogent argument today. The burden of proof is you on today that won't turn into a mega Gaza, that will make life in the coastal plain impossible. Now I challenge you to convince anyone that that won't be the case, because that's what they told us in Gaza. Yitzhak Rabin and Arik Sharon, the great security experts, all ensured us that there would be a peace in the West.
Once we get out of
I'm prepared to give you the alternative, but I need time from
Binational state?
No, not from binational.
Forever living on
What's
throne?
interesting is this has nothing to do with BDS.
Is the
But,
eight
okay.
states-
No, that's not the only
Eight
alternative.
Okay, wait.
That's not the solution.
I want to close.
That's not the solution.
I'd like to-
That's not the solution.
refocus.
Tulkarem and
It's an
Jenin
excellent
and Gaza.
solution. Show me one state in the
This is the only
world that
thing
will
which
accept
works.
it.
Be quiet. I kind of feel right now that I'm sitting at a table where everybody is doing what everybody does all the time. You're not listening to him. He's not listening
I'm
to
listening
you.
to him very
No.
carefully,
You,
unfortunately, I'm hearing
Martin,
what he's
have a
saying.
very clear idea of what you want to say, what you want to hear, and if it's not there, then you're going to sit down and talk them both out. So let's, for a moment here in Israel, at ILTV, actually have a discussion. Try and let perhaps the people who are sitting anywhere in the world listen to us and have different ideas. Don't drown me out with your voice. Don't tell me that I'm wrong. Let each one of us present an idea and let other people listen to our ideas without your stepping into mine or my stepping into yours, and let us listen to each other, because I think right now that BDS is a serious problem, and that was what we were going to talk about. But I don't think that BDS is going to bring about the destruction of the state of Israel, and I don't think that that's relevant, because anybody can draw a map. And I want right now not a percentage of the state of Israel. I said, as you said, for us to give money so that the next generation, Martin, will look at us and not see 4 people yelling at each other because because we have different opinions. We may not agree, but at least we can have a civil discourse of some sort.
So actually, I'd like to bring a follow-up question for that. And honestly, I couldn't have rounded that conversation up better myself. Thank you so much, Colonel. But okay, so going back to that subject, with BDS, one of the main arguments with BDS is that it's kind of convoluted, mixed between legitimate discussions and criticisms of Israel and thinly veiled anti-Semitism. So at what point can we look at their criticisms and take them seriously still?
I can't do that with BDS. I actually think that BDS does not have any redeeming qualities because when you read the 3 points that BDS call for when it comes to the state of Israel, they completely delegitimize our right to be here because they're talking about 1948, they're talking about the Arab citizens of Israel, and I don't think that we're a perfect democracy, but we actually have full equality under law. Oh my God, we have discrimination. Then again, every single country in the world, look yourself in the mirror, they all have discrimination, and we need to try to face that. But BDS calls for us not to be what we are, which is Jewish self-determination in this land. And so I don't put them into any type of legitimacy. That's different from having lots of criticism of the policies of the state of Israel.
I see. So then how do we separate the face, how do we rather expose the face of BDS as the thin mask of anti-Semitism?
I disagree with that analysis. I think BDS is built on the delegitimization of Israel, which is closely and inseparably connected with the legitimization of the Palestinian narrative. As Dr. Kedar said, the Palestinian narrative is a total negation of the Zionist narrative. And in many ways, people who support the two states have fueled BDS because by acknowledging the validity of the Palestinian narrative and their claim to statehood and the claim to nationhood, basically what you do is delegitimize the Jewish claim because they are mutually exclusive. The attempt to say that we can divide the land is ridiculous. I'm a non-observant Israeli. So what I'm saying is doesn't flow from some religious fervor. It flows from a cold, political, scientific analysis of the situation. And you cannot divide the land between the river and the sea and create a stable situation which preserves Israel's security. And, you might have believed this naive hope in the beginning of the 90s and the giddy euphoria over Oslo. But quarter of a century later, after you've given them Gaza and the terror in Judea and Samaria, in order to come and advocate a Palestinian state, which is perhaps the only way that you can some way mitigate the BDS, you have to convince people that what was won't be again. And there is absolutely no way to do that. There's no way to do that. Because the people say, well, let's divide the territory. What are you going to do? Give them the eastern slopes overlooking the coastal plain? Or give them the western slopes that you need to prevent invasion from the west? What are you going to do?
So,
where the border...
therein lies the real question then. What are we going to do?
The only question is to go into a massive public diplomacy campaign fueled by $1 billion to delegitimize the Palestinian narrative and find alternative abodes for non-belligerent Palestinians in Judea and Samaria.
First of all, I would like to...
I want to say one thing. Israel was established, and the idea of the Zionism was the self-determination of the Jewish people by building a state. This was our demand, and we decided that we want to play the international game of politics and to have our own self-determination like every other nation. By saying that, like Martin said, fueling or not fueling, whenever, in the moment that you are saying between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean, all its mind, although the population more or less, it's at least almost 50-50, meaning if you don't accept the self-determination of the other side, so there the BDS don't accept our self-determination, then we have to fight and to debate him, no doubt. But the question is, what is the argument in the moment that you have said all mine, and then meaning that you close immediately? One moment you close immediately the hearing of the international community and young generation which look for justice. I can't accept such a kind of argument. And then you have to take into consideration that Israel, first house has disappeared. Second house, if you want to keep the third house and the third homeland, the Jewish people. You have to understand. You have to understand that you need the international community with you, not against. This is the argument.
So the only way you get the international community to be with you, the only way to get the international community is by giving in to the enemy. Really?
First of all, we have to expose the hypocrisy of the BDS movement. They don't talk about Myanmar and the persecution of the Rohingya. They don't talk about how Russia flattened cities and towns in Syria, killing who knows how many thousands of people. That's not their matter. They don't talk about the occupation of France to some islands all over the world, the occupation of Britain to the Falkland Island. All these slogans which they use against us, they don't use the same thing to other nations. So this is, first of all, hypocrisy. And whenever, in academic institutions where I go, when I tell the guys, those who are protesting against Israel, so what did you do against what happened in Myanmar? What did you do against Russians? So they feel like attacked, means that they actually did nothing. They only single Israel out, and this is why this is, first of all, made of hypocrisy. Secondly, an answer to Abu Vilan. The only solution is not the criminals which you brought from Tunisia. The only solution is to establish emirates in the cities of Judea and Samaria, because this is the only thing which connects with the sociology of these people, not with the money which is corrupting everybody since you established the PA. And you, means the left, the Israeli left, actually destroyed the structure, or try to destroy, because they're still keeping the families, means the clans. And this is why, and you know what Nuhal Shachen is, a procedure of neighbor, which is illegal, immoral. Okay, what you did by bringing Arafat to take care of Hamas and Jihad without Bagatz and without B'Tselem is a giant Nuhal Shachen neighbor procedure. Giant. You brought Arafat because you couldn't deal with the Hamas and Jihad. So you brought Arafat to deal with them. Means they to kill them.
Who created Hamas? You're an expert. Tell the spectators.
Yes.
Who created Hamas?
We? I'll tell you against who.
So right now I'm at the stage that I'm thinking to myself, okay, so it's the you, okay? I oppose pointing. I think that everybody should learn how to be responsible for what they've done. As far as I recalled in the State of Israel, ladies and gentlemen, from 1977 until 2017 that we're sitting here right now, I'll start counting the amount of years of who ruled over what and did whatever. And I think that the idea of compromises is at the base of both democracy and policy. You don't want a democracy, that's something else. Because if you say, we'll make them go, that's kind of like saying, I don't want a democracy. Democracy is messy and yucky, and it's all about compromise. But I'm more opposed to the fact that you think in this sense, that when we look and we point, both of you, your answers on what needs to be done to BDS, you immediately go to, we need to build something that they don't want. We need to make them leave even they don't want. Who told you? So I love the fact that Moti Keidal, who speaks Arabic, knows better than all of them. He knows. Shalom Vilan doesn't know. Miri doesn't know. But Moti Keidal knows. You have a big voice. You've put it out there. Everybody thinks that the Palestinians want Emirates. I won't surprise you by telling you most of the Palestinians don't think it's a good idea. And but you know the Palestinians who want it. What about the ones who don't want it?
You brought criminals.
But this is not going to resolve. Excuse me, gentlemen. BDS is not in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. That's not where my problem is Israel. That's not where I am putting that money. I am putting that money into the international community. And Martin, I still want to be able, excuse me, I still want to be able to fly on a plane and go to France and to the UK, to go onto American campuses, and I want my voice as a, as a positive voice.
To say what?
Unfortunately, that is all the time that we have today for this edition of ILTV's Israel Weekly. Thanks again to our guests for coming in. I appreciate the wonderful spirited debate. I'm sorry that we could not continue it. And thank you again to all of you watching at home for watching at home. Have a wonderful week, and shalom from Israel.